Jenny gripped the steering wheel, frustration rising as the rain pounded the windshield and traffic remained stalled. Of course, tonight, of all nights, some massive wreck had to trap her in its aftermath. Her eyes cut to the clock. Late. She was going to be really and truly late. At this rate, her date with Mark, the cute drummer she'd been talking to from that new band, would be over before she even got there. She groaned and leaned forward, resting her forehead on the wheel. Why did she think she could manage a date on a work night? Her boss had already dumped extra work on her desk to finish, and now this. The whole universe seemed dead set against her love life getting off the ground. Maybe she should call Mark and ask for a rain check. But that felt like giving up, and she'd been looking forward to this. Even if they rescheduled, how did she know another wreck or more work wouldn't leave her crippled with anxiety again? Sitting back up, she swiped damp hair off her face. No, she had to make this work. She'd get through this traffic eventually, race home, clean up, and meet Mark with an apology for being so late. She refused to let her usual tricks for self-sabotage and bad luck rob her of a shot at something that might be really good. Not tonight. Jenny dialed Mark's number, her pulse pounding. She hated phones and was terrible at flirting. Why did she think mixing the two would go well? Mark picked up, his gravelly voice sending a shiver down her spine. Hey, Jenny, are we still on for tonight? Hi, Mark. Definitely. Just wanted to warn you I got stuck in traffic hell after work. Still 30 minutes out at least. She laughed, nervous. The whole universe must be against me making it anywhere on time tonight. Don't worry about it. I'll grab a drink at the bar until you get here. We've got all night. Mark chuckled, warm and easy. Jenny grinned, biting her lip. Was he flirting with her? Her brain misfired, and nothing came out of her open mouth for too long. After an awkward pause, she stammered, Sounds good. I'll rush home to clean up after baking in this metal trap. She winced, wishing she could disappear into her seat. Why was she like this? But Mark just laughed again, the sound untying her tongue. Take your time. I've seen you at shows. You always look great. The wait will just make finally meeting in person better. Her cheeks flushed. He'd noticed her before and thought she looked great. Maybe she hadn't blown this completely with her clumsy stab at wit. She could turn this around. Flatterer, she grinned, gaining steam. Keep talking like that and I may break some speed limits getting there. Where had that come from? But it felt good to volley back. I'll keep the compliments coming if it gets you here quicker. Drive safe, Jenny. See you when you arrive. With that, Mark ended the call, leaving Jenny caught between mortified and giddy excitement for their date to come. Her awkward flirt needed work, but at least he seemed to find it charming, not off-putting. Jenny's phone shrieked an emergency alert siren, making her jump. She grabbed it from the passenger seat, anxiety spiking as she read, Emergency alert. Remain in your vehicle or shelter in place immediately. Updates to follow. The alert repeated and kept blaring. Around her, other drivers were checking their phones, confused and worried. Jenny's heart pounded. Remain in your vehicle or shelter in place. That didn't sound good, but she was stuck here with nowhere else to go. Her eyes scanned the sea of brake lights around her, all motionless. The rain still poured down in sheets. Now an ominous feeling hung in the air after everyone had read that alarming alert. But no details came through about what was happening or how long they might be trapped. Not knowing fueled her worry, mind racing through worst-case scenarios that could warrant such an alert. She thought of Mark at the bar waiting for her, unaware. Jenny shook her head. No, she couldn't panic. It might be nothing, just a tech glitch that triggered the alert by mistake. Or at worst, a huge traffic snarl miles from here. She took a deep breath, trying to steady her nerves. Still, something felt off. An alert like that should have included some info on what was happening and instructions to follow. The total lack of context or follow-up seemed unsettling. She peered through rain-streaked windows at the dark, empty road beyond her headlights' glow. Everything appeared normal, but felt sinister now, as if some unseen threat was lurking just out of sight, waiting for the moment to descend upon them, without warning. Jenny strained to listen for any clue as to what might be unfolding outside this metal cage trapping them in place. But between the pounding rain, blaring alert tones and her own pulse thundering in her ears. Little could be discerned of the outside world or what the night might still have in store. Jenny hurriedly turned on the radio, desperate for news about these alarming alerts. At first, only static sounded. She scanned stations until one came through. Remain in your vehicles with doors locked. Avoid any individuals exhibiting bleeding from the eyes or other mucous membranes. The origin and nature of the attacks are still unknown. Local authorities have advised to shelter in place until further notice. I repeat. The signal was cut out, then returned with a special announcement from the president, repeating similar warnings to avoid anyone showing symptoms like eye bleeding. They didn't know yet if it was a fast-acting virus, chemicals, or something else. But it seemed to lead to violence. Jenny felt frozen in place as a chill spread through her veins. Attacks? Bleeding eyes? Violence? Her mind struggled with little information. Each scenario was more terrifying than the last. The president's announcement cut out mid-sentence, replaced with sounds of yelling, gunfire, and chaos before turning to static again. Jenny sat in stunned silence, knuckles white on the steering wheel. This couldn't be real. Just some twisted Halloween prank. But the alerts and broadcast suggested otherwise. Some massive attack or outbreak was unfolding, and she was trapped in the hot zone with no escape. Panic swelled sharp and fast in her chest, pulse pounding as her breath came in ragged gasps. She looked wildly around at the vehicles and people surrounding her, wondering how many might already be infected or turning violent. How long until whatever was out there reached them? Jenny's heart pounded as she leaned out the open window, straining to hear past the blaring horns and pounding rain. In the distance, faint yells and panicked screams. Her blood ran cold. Whatever was happening out there, the chaos was getting closer. Those screams left no doubt violence was unfolding nearby. Jenny scrambled back in, locking the doors with shaking hands. She was trapped while danger and violence edged nearer. Each second passed in slow agony, waiting for signs of how bad this might get. Jenny closed her eyes, hot tears spilling down her cheeks as she struggled to steady her breath. This couldn't be real. She should be on her date with Mark, not locked in this metal cage with the world falling apart outside. She opened her eyes to the sea of red taillights still surrounding her. Everyone else was stuck here too, with nowhere to run and no way to know how this might end. A loud bang close by made her jump. A gunshot? More screams followed, each sparking fresh panic as her mind raced with thoughts of what horror might come next. She peered through windows, fogged by her panicked breath, searching wildly for any signs of violence nearing. But rain and dark obscured much beyond her headlights' glow. Everything else remained hidden in shadow and uncertainty. The night stretched endlessly before her. Familiar roads turned claustrophobic as escape routes were cut off one by one. Reason insisted this couldn't be real, even as her instincts shrieked that the threat lurking unseen in the dark was closing in with every heartbeat. Jenny frantically scanned radio stations but found only static or empty air. Communication seemed to be cut off now. She jumped, stifling a scream as a man suddenly ran past, glancing around as if fleeing some unseen threat. More followed, sprinting by in panicked flight from whatever fresh hell chased them. Jenny's breath came fast and hard, watching them flee past her windows. Everything about their fear and speed suggested they ran from violence, headed this way. She felt frozen, lost in confusion and fear with nowhere left to turn. Should she abandon her car and run before whatever was coming descended upon them? But run where? Out there in the dark and rain, she'd have no bearings, no idea which path might lead to safety. Each second, paralyzed by doubt, felt eternal as danger came closer. She peered through windows, still fogged with the panicked breath, pulse pounding in anticipation of the next signs of what might be headed their way. One thing was clear: she couldn't stay trapped, waiting for this nightmare to find her. But running into the unknown felt like a mad gamble with her life. No good choices remained, only mazes of evil whichever path she took. Stay or run. A loud explosion shook the ground nearby, shattering the night. Jenny screamed, scrambling for her phone with shaking hands to call for help. But no signal could be found. She was cut off now. Before she could react, a woman appeared at her passenger window, pounding the glass with wild terror in her eyes. She was yelling something Jenny couldn't make out, pleading with her to let her in as she yanked the locked handle in desperation. Jenny froze, torn between letting her in and staying sealed from whatever danger lurked unseen outside. But before she could decide, a snarling man emerged from the dark, tackling the screaming woman to the ground in violent chaos. The woman's pleading screams turned to anguished cries that rang out, echoing through the night until at last, falling eerily silent. Jenny cowered in her seat, listening in horror with hands clamped over her mouth to stifle panicked sobs. She peered out through windows streaked with tears and rain, searching the now empty night where just moments before that woman had stood begging for life. Jenny looked up slowly, already dreading what fresh horror might wait outside for her this time. A man stood just beyond her window, only inches of glass between them. Blood streamed from his eyes, trailing down a face locked in a gruesome grin as he stared right at her. Jenny opened her mouth to scream just as the man smashed through the window in one violent lunge, shards of glass raining down around her.